Chapter 12. The other two fuck-ups stood at the door, covering what little light shone into the basement. When Thorn glanced down, Thomas was lying flat on his stomach. He bent to touch Thomas and found he was still alive. He reached down, pulled him up to meet his face. It was the face of the worst part of the werewolf. Thorn's eyes glowed in the dark. His lips receded behind a set of sharp teeth. It was the face of a man and wolf bent on killing. It was that look in Thorn's eyes that let Thomas know that he wouldn't be alive much longer. Thomas tried moving his hands, his body, but for some reason they wouldn't cooperate. In Thorn's large hands he was a limp animal who had been caught by a wild wolf. Thorn thrust his teeth into Thomas's jugular, and with his hands he snapped Thomas's neck, and the dull sound of a body falling didn't reach the ears of the two men standing in the doorway until seconds later, when all was silent except the rush of hard breathing. They turned and shut the door, not waiting for any news from the last one who had ventured into the dark hell Thorn had just descended from. When Tracker walked outside into the fresh air of the cabin and jumped on his bike, the season had changed. Damon rode in a truck which he had rented the night before. Leaves were falling 3 at a time from the trees. Soon the weather would change quickly. It could be cold and rainy, sometimes even snowy in Flagstaff this time of year by the time they reached Thorn, but they had to find Thorn and find him soon. Sadia waited to ride on back of Tracker's bike, instead of with Damon. She and Damon didn't care to be together for 7 hours. They had located the place where Thorn was being held captive. Someone had left Thorn's smartphone on, and Damon was able to locate them, because of the app on his phone their father had installed on it. Thorn had planned to take the app off, because he didn't like the intrusion into his life. He was a yearling and not a pup anymore, but the app that tracked him had proven that it was needed. Tracker helped Sadia on the back. He appeared more pleasant than before, but he still wasn't the werewolf she thought she had tamed. There were some animals not meant to be tamed or controlled, and Tracker was one of those animals. Sadia, feeling content she had soothed the savage beast, made up her mind she wouldn't let him get away from her a second time, but Tracker hadn't completely forgiven her, and it would take a lot to convince him that she was what he wanted and desired, besides the obvious need for sex. They had been riding for 3 hours before Tracker stopped to gas up his Harley. Damon followed him off the interstate. He turned off the motorcycle, and Sadia bounced off. He glanced at her and said, "Don't go in there and come back out someone else. It's unsettling." Sadia turned with a grin on her face and said to him, "I didn't think anything could unnerve you, Tracker." He didn't like the noticeable smirk on her face, as if she had another secret. Sadia strutted away into the store wearing a pair of skin-tight leather jeans and a leather jacket. Tracker watched her the whole time, until she disappeared into the restroom. He began pumping the gas, and realized that he had been using Hunter's credit cards. He had better get one for himself, but he had been busy and thought Hunter would understand. Hunter would understand everything, except the news about the motorcycle. Standing near Tracker, Damon watched Tracker's reaction to Sadia. He leaned over and said, "Why don't you take her for your mate? She's never going to give up on you." "I have places to go before then," Tracker said, turning to look at the gas pump. "It appears you are right back where you started," Damon said with a snicker. Tracker raised his eyebrow and eyes to Damon, who raised his hands in surrender and turned his head, looking up to the sky. Damon was annoying Tracker. He had too many opinions about how he should live his life. "Never mind that. Do you have a map of Flagstaff on your phone?" "I have better than that. Remember when Father gave us all a phone?" "Yes, and where are you going with that?" "He installed an app with a tracker. I know just where Thorn is. It could be he just wanted some time with that woman of his." "That doesn't make any sense," Tracker said. "Then why send a finger to Father?" "Maybe it's not Thorn's finger," Damon said. Father wouldn't have reacted the way he did and sent you to search for him, Tracker said. Werewolves in love never make sense. You weren't in love with Zoey. You would never have given her up had you felt that way about her. Maybe I gave Zoey up because I was in love with her, Tracker said. Not you. Or maybe it was because you're in love with someone else, and you know well enough what I'm saying, Damon said, pointing his chin in the direction of Sadia. Sadia strutted up to Tracker and Damon as they were talking. Damon saw the look in Sadia's face when Tracker said that perhaps he did love Zoey. Are we going to stand here and discuss how much you love Zoey, Tracker? Or are we going to find the girl you love? You may be shocked to discover that she's with the one that sent the finger to your father. What are you saying, Sadia? When I was hitchhiking. You were hitchhiking? Don't pretend, Tracker, you are concerned about me. She stared at Tracker. He didn't know what to say. There was this couple coming from Samseville. A blonde-haired girl about my age, and she had these deep dark blue eyes. She appeared nervous and terrified the entire time I rode in the car. She didn't say a word, and then I heard the man call her Zoey. I just remembered when I saw a poster of her in that convenience store. Do you think? Tracker said. I don't know, but that picture looked just like the girl, and that scary guy called her Zoey, Sadia said. We'll know in a few hours. Get on, Tracker said to Sadia, and Tracker watched as Sadia jumped on the motorcycle. He placed his long legs over and started it up, after taking time to put on his helmet. The helmet was for decoration only, and to prevent from being pulled over by the police. He didn't know the laws in each state he had to cross, but he knew he didn't have time for some nosy cop wondering why he was riding an expensive motorcycle, even if he had pulled him over just to admire it. Given all the problems he had with Bo, and because Zoey was perceived to be a missing person, and he was the last one seen with her, an overzealous policeman could pay too much attention to him. And then one thing would lead to another, and the game would be on and over. He would get pulled into something more awful than the killings of Bo and his disgusting friends, something that could affect the Samsa werewolves and the pack for a lifetime.